Mesdames et messieurs, et vous les enfants. It's the 15th of August and the height of the summer here in the UK. An unseasonably warm welcome to the Great British Mickey Waffle, the podcast where we bring you the latest hints, tips and tricks to make your next visit to any Disney park around the world the most magical yet. I'm Claire, and this show is a really special one for so many reasons. And as always, I'm absolutely not trusted to do this alone. So keeping me in check today are John, Ben and Becca. Bonjour et bienvenue au spectacle.
Bonjour, Claire.
Bonjour, Claire.
Look at that, I've even got there as well. I've been practicing.
John's churning out his GCSE.
Got to be done.
Well done.
It didn't even get as far as that, Claire. I'll gladly admit.
I'm just going to dig out my Google Translate for this episode.
Oh, that's how it's going to go, I think.
That's what I've got, Ben.
Yeah.
You can always ask Siri or someone if you ask. I am getting us all in the mood, of course, for today's discussion topic and our extremely special guest. I know that he is fluent in French, so following his recent trips, yes, 2 trips in very quick succession. So I thought we would conduct the rest of the discussion in the traditional Disneyland Paris franglais style of alternating sentences in French and English. I hope that's okay with everyone. I'm only joking, but let's formally welcome our incredible guest to the show. He's Euromia 9 and a returning guest for, he just worked out like 3 years ago. It has been far too long. Lou Mongello, welcome back to the Great British Mickey Waffle.
So, 1, thank you so much for inviting me back again. Number 2, I got very nervous when you started speaking French. I'm still having a tough time with your English accents, let alone throwing the French in there. So, if you see me just nodding my head and smiling at me, I have no idea.
We won't do that to you. We're not that cruel.
Definitely not. Apart from the fact that Claire would completely lose myself and Ben and Becca in the same conversation as well.
You'd be fine. So, it's just one of those things. I think it's a unique thing about Disneyland Paris in terms of how it all works, and you have to have a little bit of French awareness so you can get through the day sometimes, I think.
Yeah.
But Lou, genuinely, it's so great to have you back on the show, and I think we've all been looking forward to the discussion today. So thank you for making the time to talk to us.
No, absolutely. I love Disneyland Paris. I really fell in love with Disneyland Paris on my last visit. So I'm excited about any opportunity to chat with you.
Great. So you nipped over to Disneyland Paris, didn't you? After your you were on an Adventures by Disney to Italy, and you had a really quick trip, and then I've been desperate to talk to you since then. But then you went back like a couple of weeks later with Mary and your daughter for a slightly longer trip. And it seemed like you had a bit more time to explore what Disneyland Paris had to offer. Is that a fair representation of what happened in the last couple of months?
Yeah, so we were finally able to do our group Adventures by Disney to Italy, and we're like, listen, we're already like right across the street. We need to go. I need to finish. It was the last park I needed to visit of all the parks worldwide, and we only got to spend a day and a half there, but I was instantly enamored with Disneyland Paris for a wide spectrum of reasons. And then I was very, very fortunate to have the opportunity to go back for a few days and take my daughter, who was unable to come on the Adventures by Disney. It was a blessing from above that she and I could together. So we spent about 3-4 days in Disneyland Paris, and then obviously because it's so easy, we spent a few days in Paris proper for a really nice.
Wonderful.
Amazing.
I fell in love.
It's easy to do. It's easy to do, and I think because it's our local park, if it can be local, I suppose it's local for for where I live and Ben and Becca live.
Yeah.
Where you live, yeah.
Local for John.
To be fair, if I got in the car now, I could be there for bedtime, definitely.
Yeah.
So it's now 8 o'clock in the UK, so I could be there for about 11 o'clock tonight if I jumped in the car.
You could get there for fireworks.
Yeah, I could get there. Yeah, I could get there for the fireworks. It'd be great. But we've racked up quite a few trips between us since it opened in 1992, and so we thought it'd be fun to have a conversation and see it maybe through your eyes a little bit. So I'm interested. First question, straight out the box: what surprised you about Disneyland Paris?
I think that there was a lot that surprised me. I really went in honestly with no expectations. I didn't look at any maps. I don't like to watch videos ahead of time. I did not want to see the dragon until I saw her with my own eyes. I'm happy that I waited. So having sort of no real expectation, we hear things. Oh, the park is this, the people are this, the park is small. And all of those, any of those preconceptions were really, for the most part, untrue. I think the biggest surprise for me was, one, how beautiful the park is. My favorite part of Disneyland Paris is Disneyland Paris. Just wandering through the park, the castle is spectacular. She is my favorite of the castles. She is elegant and gorgeous, and the lines and the architecture, I think, is just spectacular. But I think how rich and well themed each of the lands were as well was really surprising to me.
I absolutely agree with you about the castle. And in fact, interesting fact, my daughter has a mural of that castle on her bedroom wall that I painted and she calls it her castle. It's not her castle, but she likes it. Is the most incredible thing to see when you turn around. You come up Main Street and you've got the bandstand at the bottom of Main Street. It sort of obscures it slightly, so you sort of go through that or around it, and then this incredible tall reaching pink castle with the gold turrets. It's just so stunning, and it just, for me, it is Mary Blair inspired perfectly in terms of the artistic approach to it. So yeah, and I've never been able to take a bad photograph of it ever, regardless of
even with the grey,
even when it's raining.
Yeah, it sits out. It sits out absolutely amazing with the skyline as well. So,
and I wonder whether
absolutely brilliant,
because Cinderella Castle's not a particularly. It's slightly similar colour scheme now. I think the pink is creeping across the Atlantic slightly because it's where they repainted. Maybe they learn. I mean, I think that we all recognise that some of the things in Disneyland Paris are unique, and we've had lots of conversations about the things that we love. But I'm interested to know, and I think we're all intrigued, which attraction, restaurant, and resort would you import to Walt Disney World?
Oh, that's a great question. So I'm going to give you the my answer would be none of them, because I would want to have a reason to go and visit Disneyland Paris. But in the spirit of the question itself, the attraction that I would bring over, I don't even remember what it's called. What's the name of the old backlot tour, which is now the Cars attraction?
Oh,
is it Cars Motors Royale?
I don't remember.
No, I think Phantom Manor is absolutely spectacular. It is my favorite of the haunted mansions, because I don't consider Mystic Manor a haunted mansion. There is something about it. It's macabre and the other mansions. I love the entranceway. I love that beautiful music box in the outside queue. I love the addition of the Western scene and some of the music and the exterior being somewhat decrepit and the storyline, like I could go on and on. I think the attraction's spectacular.
I think it's strange actually when you've done other haunted mansions, isn't it? And then I go back to Phantom Manor. I go, oh no, this is so different. This is really quite sinister, but in a really endearing way. You want to ride it again and again to get the full story.
In terms of restaurants, oh, that's interesting. What restaurant would I bring over? I'm quickly going through the park. It would have to be Waltz. It has to be. I know that's probably the easy answer. Waltz. I was very fortunate. I was able to eat at Waltz twice, and I was very impressed. And just eating above Main Street and the tribute to Walt, the man, I think is wonderful in there. In terms of resorts, my answer is going to be incomplete because I haven't stayed at all. I haven't even been able to see all of the resorts. I stayed at the Art of Marvel the last time that I was there. So I would have to say the Art of Marvel that I've seen. So
I think the story of the resorts is really interesting when you go back to how they were designed. They were meant to represent different areas of the United States, and where they changed New York into the Art of Marvel, they slightly moved away from that. The original New York hotel was definitely my favourite, and it was Manhattan, just Big Apple themed. It was incredible. It's just been plussed with a few more, Spider-Man thrown in there, which is great. But it's I think the resorts are all so unique. But they have this congruous line in terms of different areas of the US, which next time you go, go and have a walk around them all and see the feel for each. And hopefully the Disneyland Hotel will be reopened the beginning of next year. So you never know, maybe you're going that.
That it wasn't open when I was there because it looks beautiful and certainly the location. But you hit on something that I noticed when I was there too, which is especially in certain areas, it was sort of like the French interpretation of what America looks like. And I have to imagine people that come to the United States and go to Epcot, like, oh, really interesting.
Yeah. I think it's funny, isn't it, when you see those different facades in terms of like Sequoia Lodge, and okay, there's the redwoods, so that must be the Pacific Northwest, and then you see Newport Bay at the far end of the lake. Okay, no, that makes sense. That's Maine. Okay, I've got this. I'm working my way around the states, and I understand it. It's we were talking before the show about which resort we would take, and I think Ben, you were suggesting the Santa Fe, weren't you?
Yeah, it just feels like that'd be something that'd be quite an interesting because it's. But then we said that resort because it's Cars themed. There's a lot of that representations in like art of animation with sort of the areas that you can go and visit, that sort of side. But I also wonder whether it would actually fit better with Disneyland, being with Cars Land, and there'd be something that would be a sort of nice sort of theme and integration that you actually feel like you're staying at the Cozy Cone.
Maybe Cozy Cone. You're talking food.
Yeah, I'm completely distracted now because you mentioned cozy cones.
That's it. That's the tangent we're going off on.
Yeah, all about food.
I think.
Oh, absolutely.
If we were to add another resort, what would it look like? You had a bit of armchair imagineering. What would another resort look like? Because I think there's the scope for another resort. There's definitely space.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think?
When you said space, it's actually the first thing I thought of is I love Discoveryland. I love the fact that it is not sort of locked into a certain place in time. I love that Jules Verne-esque borderline steampunkish retro future. I think you could really make a wonderfully themed companion resort to tie into that. I love 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, which unfortunately was closed. I now have to go back. But that's wonderful.
Yeah. And I think Discoveryland is one of the areas that has changed quite a lot since the park opened, because obviously the Space Mountain storyline has changed a couple of times. Obviously, it's currently Hyperspace Mountain. The original Voyage to the Moon with the original soundtrack was unbelievably brilliant. And where Buzz Lightyear was a Circle 360 Jules Verne story with all about turn of the century engineering and amazing experience in the Visionarium, which is, I remember going and seeing that and thinking, this is really cool. But then I went back next time and it was, Buzz Lightyear. So IPs win out sometimes, unfortunately. But I think that the whole, when you look at the design around that area of the park, Discoveryland is just so stunning. What about you, John? Where would you? What would you add?
It also stands out as well. I'm more down the line. If you're going for the hotel bit, the Disneyland Hotel, as it stands, would be the most incredible thing in just one of the parks in Florida. Just that whole bit where you're actually looking into the park of an evening without actually going in, but actually being within such close proximity as well. And I know we've spoken recently about Animal Kingdom Lodge, but it's not quite in the park, is it? We've talked about even Contemporary. We've even talked about Grand Floridian when Ben and Becca were there, but it's not quite in the park as such. And that's the bit that really intrigues me as a place in Paris. I would really love to go and see. The one thing, Lou, I'm curious because as someone who's been to Magic Kingdom in Orlando so many times, what did you make of Big Thunder Mountain?
I loved it. We rode it a couple of times and we really, really enjoyed it. I love that whole area. I love that whole section of the park. I love the whole park. Who am I kidding? I love it. It incorporates elements of some of the other Big Thunder attractions, and I love sort of where it is and being able to see Phantom Manor and the connection to story there.
Yeah, I think as always, Big Thunder is better at night in the dark, and being out on that island in the middle of the lake when it's dark.
Oh.
That's absolutely. Or
even the other way around, though. I don't know, Lou, whether or not you managed to get to experience, of a night time, even just taking photographs of Big Thunder with the reflection in the water in front of it. It just adds a completely different feel to it. And what's quite nice is you can just sort of, again, just sit and watch the world pass by with the sound of people screaming from the middle of the island, which kind of echoes around the whole place. And you've got Phantom Manor, and you're suddenly aware that once it goes a little bit quiet, you've got this kind of that sort of mixed feeling of that area where you've got so many different things actually happening. I find it quite an intriguing place. Did you manage to go to the little boat ride at the back of the park? Because to me, that is one of the...
Give it its proper name, John.
Oh, come on. Was it Le Pas de Cons de Fête? Oh, that kind of ilk.
Ben, edit that bit.
I'm going to leave that in. That's perfect.
Yeah, leave it in. That's as good as me French gets. Awesome. There you go.
Is it? You mean like the Storybook Land canal boat?
Yeah, the Storybook boat.
They make me say the title of it. You get away with describing it exactly as it is. With all the miniatures, figures, and
trying to speak French, so I don't want. I love it. I really, really enjoyed that because I told my daughter, like, I want to ride everything. I want to experience everything once. We even did, and I don't know the name, but the Casey Jr. train. I'm like,
right.
Yeah.
It's very different than the Casey Jr. train in Disneyland, but I love the small vignettes and scenes that very slow moving. That attraction makes me think of Walt. Like it would be an attraction that Walt would have, and an attraction that Walt would design and enjoy.
And did you find the secret seats on Casey Jr.? So the back seats on that train face the other way. It's just the back bench faces backwards. Do you ride it backwards?
Let me write down another reason.
We're going to give you all sorts of things to remember for next time. Yeah, it's the only seat everything else faces forwards, but the one at the back faces backwards, so you can ride the whole thing looking where you've been.
I love that.
The boat ride itself is one of those things that so many people just walk past, and it kind of just sits back just that little bit. So if you're if you're intrigued by the design and the Imagineering, you will go and find it. If you're the type of person that's sort of just lapping the park and just going, I'm going on a different ride, the chances are you'll miss it. And yet it is, like you said, Lou, it's something that is intrinsically linked to Walt. And actually, I think it's the most amazing little piece of Disney magic that maybe people would think, oh, well, it's only for small children because it's a miniature land and so on. But it's top of my list every single time we go, because it's one of those places that you just think that just sets Disneyland Paris apart from everywhere else, you know.
Yeah.
John, is Small World also on your list?
Yeah, just purely for the outside. The actual facade is just so incredible, and again, you just look at the design of how it's so different and yet so familiar, and that's the bit where I think with Paris, Disneyland Paris, it sets itself up to be unique in some respects, and yet in others, it's bringing back in that little Disney bit. And I think for you, Lou, that must be something you must see the familiarity thing, having been to all the other parks, and yet when you come to somewhere that's for the first time, you know, how did that sort of tie in with the likes of Tokyo? Did it tie in with the likes of Disneyland? You know,
yeah. So one of the things, you know, you only sort of get to experience this once, but that when you walk into a park for the first or second time, there is this sense of discovery, and I think, by the way, I think the app is possibly the best of all the Disney park apps. But I love not having a map. I love just sort of going where you know, the weenies would sort of draw us to, and sort of literally discovering new sections of the park that don't exist here at Walt Disney World. So finding, which wasn't open the first time I was there, but that new little Italian section in Magic Kingdom near It's a Small World, that sort of little street with the gelato shop. It was this brand new discovery for me. And like we absolutely loved the Alice in Wonderland maze. Like we had like such a wonderful time walking through it.
The Curious Lemons is incredible, isn't it? It's just like I would love to do that on my own in the dark with no other guests in there. Just let me have half an hour in there on my own. So I haven't got to fight past small children to go through the small doorway or things like that. Push them out of the way. It doesn't matter how many times I go in there, it always makes me smile, whether that be the hedge maze with the Queen of Hearts jumping out, or whether when you get to the top of the King of Hearts castle and the palace, and you look out and you see that incredible view across the Disneyland park. It's a really unique viewpoint that you can't get anywhere else. And you know that for me it's so great. It's such a great attraction, and people walk past it because it's just a walk through. It's not just a walk through. Don't miss it out. Lou, did you at any point discover the fact that you can walk from the front of the park to the back of the park undercover the entire way?
It happened by accident on the last hour that we were there. We were going back to the exit of the park, and we said, "Oh, we'd love to try and ride Phantom Manor one more time." And I don't know if my daughter knew or we sort of spotted the covered walkway. It was like discovering fire. I was like, "Oh my!" I don't know why I was like fascinated by that like little secret walkway. Like I had discovered something nobody else knew about. But again, it's those little sort of hidden things throughout the park that are wonderful little surprises all along the way.
Definitely. And I love the fact that you can so you can get over to Phantom Manor because you can cut in front of the restaurants on the boardwalk bit, and you're undercover, but you can cut through this like the fort bit, and then there's a covered walkway all the way through Adventureland, all the way back to pretty much Peter Pan, completely covered. So prepared for the French weather, whether that be snow, rain, hail, whatever it might be, you can stay dry and get all the way to the back. If you get head of Discoveryland, you're on your own, but certainly on the left side of the park, you can get all the way back to Pirates pretty much without having to get damp at all. which I think it's just such a clever addition. And I kind of wish they'd done that in Walt Disney World somehow. I know it's, it kind of rains there sometimes, I believe.
Every so often.
Costs more for the aircon.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Costs more for aircon. Yeah. Lou, what did you make of the nighttime entertainment? Did you stay for fireworks shows? And
we did. And on my first visit in the spring, I was fortunate to be able to see the Avengers drone show.
Wonderful.
Just mind-blowingly good. And then on this trip, and we were very fortunate, Disneyland Paris was very kind to us. We had wonderful viewing spot right in front of the castle. I think that those two shows, whose names I do not remember right now, but the drone show and then the castle show, and I know I'm sort of in my honeymoon phase with Disneyland Paris, but they may be the very best nighttime spectacular shows I've ever seen at a Disney park.
Is it Disney? Is it Dreams still?
Yeah. So I think it's Dreams at the minute, isn't it?
Yeah.
And whatever the other one was. But I was moved. Like, I loved the story of Peter Pan and the shadow on the castle and the drones. And it's a multi-sensory experience, right? With lights and lasers and water and music. And I was moved. Like, I was wonderfully moved. I think it's remarkably good.
It's clever. It's just it sort of makes you go, oh, this is like a notch up sometimes. I think and they haven't always been like that, but this one particularly is very good. And I think the Marvel drone show's just mind blowing. Yeah, when
it's something we're just adding drones to a show. It's just something that we've not experienced.
Very
before.
unique to Disneyland Paris.
Yeah, I don't think they're allowed drones in Orlando. That's possibly.
We had it once. One for a
it was
Disney Springs. Right. And they're like, oh, we're just doing it. Like, and then it just never came back again. Like the Flying Dragon in Fantasyland, we just never saw drones again.
Yep.
Oh, you've just mentioned dragons. No, we can't move past that.
We can't not mention her.
Perfect segue.
So I can't mention the dragon because it's the only thing my daughter wanted to see, and it was closed.
No. Excuse to book another trip.
Right.
But that being said, and spectacular. Again, it has a sense of organic. There's a life to her, and the little details and the way the tip of her tail moves and the way her claws move and her head and her eyes. Yeah. It is absolutely amazing. I mean, now I have to take her back, obviously, to school. And we would go back a couple of times to watch her and listen to her, and where you get to watch from. I love sort of the multiple levels, which Disneyland Paris has a lot of. They do this a lot. Being able to see the park from different levels, the King's Castle, some of the different walkways.
Yeah.
I really love that about that space too.
Yeah. Did you find a little secret staircase inside the castle shop to get down to the dragon?
We did. And when we first got to the park, again, my daughter made a beeline for the castle, and the front entrance was closed. I'm like, oh, don't worry. Let's go in through the shop. There was a little tiny tear that just sort of came to the
Oh my!
Oh dear.
Yeah,
I'm sure there'll be future opportunities.
There will be future opportunities, but we spent a lot of time upstairs in the castle. We love that second story and being able to walk out and look out over the park from that second level, which we can't do here in World. But the dragon and the castle, just remarkable.
I think the attention,
and again some of the detail as well. I think that's what you're about to say.
I love the fact that when you're inside the castle, the pillars they are trees. It's organically growing out of the ground, because that's all the briars and the thorny bushes that kept Sleeping Beauty safe or asleep or whatever you want to call it, they're part of the castle structure. And I think it's beautiful when you suddenly go, oh, hang on a minute, that's not a pillar, that's a tree root.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get upstairs and you've got the magic windows and you've got the snoring knight in the corner and all the little clever things that are thrown in that you can spend a lot of time upstairs, and people, it's just a mural and a walkthrough. It's, again, if you take the time, I think you get the full experience. But
and depending on what time you go, it looks differently because the lighting hits through the windows differently.
Absolutely, yeah, 100%. And I think as well that's one of the key parts of it as well, though, Lou, isn't it? Because you could go early morning. You think, oh, that'd be a really nice picture. I'll come back later on. We'll get the camera and we'll come back. And then by the time you come back, the sun's moved around, and you're suddenly like, oh, that bit there's slightly different. And actually, the actual stained glass is casting a different colour onto the walls as well. Very, very clever. And I must admit, that's certainly one of my favourite places within the whole of that park is just going and exploring. And like you said, Lou, it's that bit where you actually get the chance to look out on the rest of the park. And it's one of them really weird experiences because loads of people just are not aware that you're actually just people watching and just lapping up what's going on in front of you, be it the stage. There's sometimes something happening on the stage at the back of the castle. There's sometimes things happening sort of side of the castle. It's a rolling kind of program there, right? And it just offers, it's like a multi-use castle in some respects, which I think is it probably goes back to how well it was designed in the first instance. Even when you look at how they put the speakers out for the evening fireworks, etc. They just look like the other trees that are all cut into the side of the hill. Clever. Yeah. I like things that are done on a clever basis.
I think the stage on the side of the castle facing Tomorrowland, not only does it aesthetically connect the castle with Tomorrowland, which has a very different look and feel to it, but it does not obscure the view from front, as you're walking down Main Street, because you sort of have, again, this. It's gorgeous. It's gorgeous the way it's designed.
I love in I'd say the hub area where you've got the shows, because we were there last year for the 30th celebrations, and they had the Dream and Shine Brighter parade, and when that comes down and they're all on the different stages, that it's just the opportunity for everyone to get a chance to see, instead of just it going round and everyone's crowding on it. It's just, I think it offers a different sort of viewpoint and sort of inclusivity of everyone being able to get a chance to interact and be a part of it.
I think that is a unique thing about those multi-time parades that they have. A lot of them at Disneyland Paris at different seasons. And I think Dream and Shine Bright is still there until September, and it's off because that's the end of the 30th. And I think that there is some unique characters, the catchiest earworm of music you could ever wish to hear. I love it, and I think that Disneyland Paris do really well with not just their daily parade, but then those extra special sort of seasonal things they do quite well, and they do them frequently. They change regularly, which I think makes it repeatable and makes it something you don't necessarily know what you're going to catch. If you book a trip in a year's time, you're not entirely sure what's going to be there, which makes it even more exciting, I think, sometimes. Lou, in terms of the layout of the park, just concentrating on Disneyland Park at the moment, did you notice how Fantasyland was constructed? Did you recognise how the bit near the castle was Europe, and then you had to cross over the water to get to England, which is where Alice, Dumbo, Toad Hall.
Of course I did.
This is like one of they do at Disneyland Paris. You can do a park tour, which is a VIP tour. It's really inexpensive. I think it's like €65 last time I did it. And it's a 3-hour walking tour around the park, and they explain the park construction and it's great if you're it's sort of like a mini Keys to the Kingdom, but not. And it's so interesting in terms of the fact that they explain how the park is laid out. And Fantasyland for me, it blows my mind because obviously the castle is in France, and then you've got Germany because you've got Sleeping Snow White, and you've got Pinocchio. So you've got Italy, and then there's a big expanse of water. There's a big river, and you have to go over a bridge. And on the other side, you've got Peter Pan, Dumbo, Alice in Wonderland.
I'm just thinking now, Claire, they'll be asking, will be passport control in a place, won't you?
Have you done your European entry pass? But that, interesting moment of realization. It took me a long time to realize that, but I find it fascinating that they would go to that level of detail.
I never realized that, but it made me think. I noticed in Adventureland, which is amazing. I love your Adventureland, and how many different regions are represented in this very sort of winding and it's a land that invites exploration, and I love that. I love being able to sort of just explore and find new things and walk through the island and go up and down into the different caves and see how, depending on where your vantage point was from, Adventureland looks very different, right? So whether you are in, Africa somewhere, or if you're in the Caribbean somewhere, if you're looking in Agrabah, all of them sort of blended into one land. Was really, really very, very smartly laid out.
Yeah, the Adventure Isle, it really reminds me of Tom Sawyer Island, but sinister. Something, Tom Sawyer Island is very, it's not
nice and fluffy and friendly,
intriguing, and whereas you go in some of those caves, they're really dark. It's like you go from the bright light into the darkness. But some of I think you're right that there's overgrown sections. There's clear vision over to Skull Rock with the water pouring out, and it's just there's so many different things there to see, and really diverse in terms of vista when you look at it from different vantage points as well.
Well, I think you make a great point about the park as a whole too, because I think the park, like all the other Disney parks at Disneyland and Magic Kingdom, it is fanciful and it's whimsical, but there's also, I think, a maturity to Disneyland Paris. Phantom Manor is scary at the end, right? It's legit. Like it is a much more, I think, mature version of the attraction, and I think some of the other attractions are like that too. I think there's a lot for older people and adults in terms of the level of excitement and thrills in this park, even more so than places like Magic Kingdom here.
So we've talked a bit about Disneyland Park. Did you go over to Walt Disney Studios?
We did. And
your opinion of Walt Disney Studios, if you would be willing to share.
I think the way a second timer felt about the studios is it is like the Disney Village. I think it's a place in transition right now. I think it's a place that the only way I described it, and this is not meant in a bad way, and threw some Disney stuff on top of it, and now they're sort of making it their own. It's a little odd in some respects. I think some of the design choices, putting the studio building, this gigantic building right at the front and not having that, grand reveal the same way, it was, I thought, an interesting choice. There was a lot of stuff that was undergoing a transformation, refurbishment, being built. So I think when Frozen Land opens, the backlot tour felt incomplete.
Did you ride the backlot tour?
Of course we did. I tried to ride everything. I love it.
I think the nicest thing that can be said about studios is that it's a work in progress.
Yeah. It is a work in progress.
It's challenging Epcot with the amount of halls that are up.
I mean, even before it started the construction, it was a work in progress. So
then, you know what, the Studios Park has some really fabulous things in terms of that. You go back to the Ratatouille courtyard, and I think that that was the first of those. And if you go to the back of the France Pavilion in Epcot, you can see how it's been mirrored. I don't know which I prefer, to be honest with you. I think they're both beautiful. There's a bit more space in Paris, perhaps, but just that whole vibe and the restaurant. And you look at Bistro Remy, is the theming in there is incredible, and the fact that there's a single rider line for the attraction is very helpful.
It's quite nice as well. When you come off the ride in Paris and you get to watch all the people who are in the restaurant, and so even as you're coming past and you're thinking, do you know something? Yeah, we need food. We need to be fed. We need to actually go and eat there. Yeah. And it's just like it's an alternative to the gift shop in some ways. Yeah, it's like look what you could have booked. Yeah. So in your next trip,
is a gift.
You want to be
it's a gift shop. Yeah. Who doesn't want to go to a restaurant where you sit on a champagne cork? Let's face it. It's
that's true.
Yeah.
But I think the Disneyland Park, the Walt Disney Studios Park, has definitely changed. And actually, I haven't been there since the Marvel side opened. John, you've been.
I have. Hey, look at
that! I know.
I'm one up.
I need to go.
I'm not too busy going over to Orlando at the moment. But,
I know. That's the thing, isn't it? Yeah. But go on, Lou. What did you make of the Avengers Campus? Because actually, I actually think as somebody who's seeing that for the first time, and possibly knowing that it's something that the IP can't be transferred across to Florida either. What were your views?
So I love Avengers Campus in Disney California Adventure. I love it here as well too. You have the additional attraction. I think Pym Test Kitchen is the best. I take back my original answer. Rewind. I think is one of the. I think the food was the best food that we ate anywhere, hands down. Okay. I love the idea of the buffet, and I don't know why they didn't do this like on the Disney Wish, because they fully embrace what the Pym Test Kitchen should be. There's little teeny tiny like hamburgers, and then there's gigantic hamburgers. There's little teeny tiny hot dogs, and there's gigantic hot dogs. The food is very fun. So I kept on going back up 7 or 8 times. Don't judge me. But
right, go as many as you like.
So much fun there in that restaurant. I think it's really, really smartly done, and I really enjoyed the variety of food and the fun nature of the food there as well.
That's such a good point about the Wish. Yeah. I went on the Wish in the end of March, and obviously ate in the Marvel restaurant there. And actually, that would have been fantastic to have like the Pym style food. That would have been so clever. You order something, you get a big one and a small one. That would have been great. What about the
Lou?
I was going to say go on, John.
I was just going to ask Lou. My only fault that I found with it, and this is probably something that's been really pernickety and really sort of unfair on the park, is because there's so much development going on behind part of it, and because the rest of it is so new. Did you pick up on the fact that some of the sightlines are not exactly the best that you would expect from a Disney perspective, and how possibly it's going to take maybe 5, maybe 10 years to actually have the growth of the trees so that you actually feel completely ensconced within the Avengers Park? But then you compare that to studios in Orlando, whereby they kind of imported all the trees around the Star Wars area, just basically blanket out. You wouldn't even be aware that there was a theme park around you once you become embroiled within the theming of it. And I've got to say, that's the one bit that remains with me from, and that was last August. It was it remains with me as something that it seemed very un-Disney, but you can see they've got so much work still to do that you can't be overly critical, because obviously it's, like I say, it's being pernickety.
First of all, I need to look up the word pernickety because I don't know what that
We expect you to use it from now on,
Yeah.
please.
Yeah, there you
But
go.
that's why I said,
Yeah.
and not in a negative way, but why I sort of, it feels like Disney bought something that was already there, laid their IP on top of it, and now is in the process of making it their own.
Yeah.
Because some of those things don't make sense from a design, from an aesthetic, from a guest flow perspective. It's just not what we're used to seeing in other parks. And I don't know necessarily why that happened, but I do think there is a way to modify that park and help that park mature a little bit and make it a little bit more in alignment with what we see elsewhere. So it's coming, but I think you're right. There are pockets of things to enjoy in that park. It's certainly not a full day park. At least I didn't feel that it was. But it will sort of mature and sort of grow into itself, I think, over time.
Yeah, I think that park it struggles with the transitions between each land. It just doesn't feel like there's enough sort of transition between one to the other. It feels like, oh, you've gone from Ratatouille and then, oh, I'm straight into Toy Story, sort of the play area. It's sort of,
I feel like there's different lands. There is no sort of way in between that you know when you enter Adventureland. You know when you enter Frontier. You don't feel that here. You don't like, only maybe when you went to, into Avengers Campus did you sort of feel that a little bit.
Yeah. Do we think Tower Terror might get a Mission Breakout? Because I really think that's going to happen just for the positioning of where it is with Avengers Campus.
So I have a confession to make. I made a big mistake. I didn't get to ride Tower of Terror. I know.
Oh, Lou.
Oh.
I can't say it. My daughter's going to get mad at me for that. I know.
And it's yet another reason to return.
We ran out of time, and I was like, we just didn't make it over. So,
the different storylines.
Yeah.
The girl with a balloon. I think for me, Tower of Terror in Paris is partly because it's half in French. Is really, it's quite scary. And again, a bit like Phantom Manor, the storyline is a little bit more sinister, if possible. But I can't get past that $1 million question of how long will it be, not when or if, but how long will it be before they change that to a Guardians Mission Breakout, like in California, because the positioning of it now, it just doesn't fit.
The shape of the building just seems exactly the same as it is in California.
It is. It's the same building.
Yeah, it just feels more of a fit than what we've done in Hollywood studios.
I'd actually convinced myself before we turned up that was what I was going to get, and I think it was only because we did a show on like sort of reimagineering most of DLP, and so I was sat on the train on the Eurostar going across. I'm thinking, brilliant! I'm gonna get a chance to see some of the Avengers stuff, and also I'm going to see how someone can maybe change Tower of Terror. But I would for those people who listen, I know Tower of Terror is my most favourite ride in Walt Disney World, and so actually it still isn't as good as the one in the studios in Orlando. I'll have it noted for those who listen avidly to the show, and I know who you are.
Yeah, and Lou, you mentioned that you went into Paris for a few days after your trip to the parks. Did you find it easily accessible? Because I think that's always for us. Obviously, we're driving or we're jumping on the Eurostar, and it's so quick and easy for us to get to Disneyland Paris. So, for anyone who's flying in, obviously, John, have you ever flown over?
No, but we stayed in Paris as well.
Okay.
And that's the thing. We had 2 nights in Paris at the start. We went to Disneyland Paris, and then 2 nights in Paris at the end. And Lou, I'd love to know your thoughts on Paris, because we did so much, and it blew me away.
Paris is the accessibility to it. The first time we went there, we stayed at the hotel in the airport and just took the train. And we took a car from Disneyland Paris to Paris, which was a very easy ride. It was about 45 minutes, maybe less than an hour. So it was a very easy ride over. So we had sort of two different vacations in one because of how easy it was to get from the park into Paris proper.
Yeah. And when you were in Paris proper, did you do all the things?
Everything.
Did you manage to
everything.
did it all? Done Paris, big tick.
Yeah.
Yeah, we saw all the important things. This was my daughter's first time going. I hadn't been since I was 16 in high school, which means I didn't really know what I was looking at. But we had such a lovely time just eating at sidewalk cafes and going up to the Arc and eating in sidewalk cafe. We ate a lot. Ate a lot. We walked a ton. But really, beautiful city, and really enjoyed our time there.
Yeah. Did you venture to Sacré-Cœur as well?
To what now?
Sacré-Cœur, which
is that
uphill all the way. Big massive church at the top of the hill.
Yes, we did. I wanted to again English and the French. It's confusing. I let my daughter design the itinerary, and she did a really wonderful job of picking out all of the major places and things that we wanted to get to see and do. And one night we did some things impulsively. Like one night we're like, let's take one of the bus tours. Let's take one of those open air bus tours, and did the nighttime bus tour, which allowed us to see different parts of Paris from a very different perspective too. But she also found individual restaurants and cafes and, little places that she wanted to shop at along the way too.
I think even now, if you do Paris at night, there is still an element of it that has some reflection on the Impressions de France film. Most of that film is grossly outdated, and France is just not like that. The little bit about Paris and the City of Lights, and as you travel around the streets with the lights outside the restaurants and the tables outside on the pavement, and that is still very much exactly how Paris is, and I think is so charming and unique in that way. The rest of the Impressions de France film that we sit through, it's France is not quite like that anymore, but
it's the Epcot version.
Yeah, that's it. It's the version that
it's a bit like when you're on Soaring and you're just in the wrong seat and the Eiffel Tower bends.
It doesn't in real life.
No,
Luke, you can attest to that.
It does not. I tried to see. I looked at it from different angles. Never.
Oh, now, Lou, you are heading back to Disneyland Paris next year, I believe.
Yeah, so we're doing an Adventures by Disney to London and Paris, and then we're going to extend for a few more days. And anybody who wants to stay or join us we're going to spend a couple of days in Disneyland Paris.
What are you going to be encouraging your friends who you're traveling with to head for? What are going to be the things that you can't miss this, other than Phantom Manor?
So I think so I love, there's a couple of things. The Castle and the Dragon, first and foremost, need to be savored. The park needs to be savored. And what I mean by that is slowly just exploring. Don't just run from attraction to attraction and check it off the list. Take time exploring. I loved walking through the two covered shopping arcades on Main Street, USA, and that really weird little alcove in the dark with the
Liberty Arcade behind the curtain. We're going to go behind the curtain.
I wasn't sure if I was supposed to be there.
Yep.
Just feels off stage, and it's like,
yeah. Those do, and really take time in Adventure Isle. Really take time, sort of letting yourself get lost in Adventure Isle. Walk down, pathways and walkways with no real destination in mind, and see where it ends up, and spend the extra 17 euros or whatever it is, and reserve your seat for the Lion King show, which is amazing.
Best
money I ever spent.
Rhythm of the Pride Lands is incredible, isn't it? It just takes in-park live entertainment to a totally different level. we have an ongoing argument around, which is the best in terms of Festival of the Lion King or Finding Nemo the musical. Rhythm of the Pride Lands just is so different, but
beats both of them.
Yeah.
Oh, it's amazing. I've seen it now, I think 4 times, and it gets better every time you see it. You see different things. So yeah, 7. That's a really good shout actually to reserve your seat, get the good seats. It's definitely worthwhile.
Yeah.
And what time of year are you going back? I'm just interested to know.
I have no idea. I don't remember.
Okay.
We are going in May, early May.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That would be nice. I'm just going to say, I'm going to throw out there, Disneyland Paris. The best time to go to Disneyland Paris is at Christmas.
So I was going to say, I want to go see it during the holidays. Like I want to see it with snow. I was going to ask you, like, am I a crazy person to want to go see it during that time? Is it just ridiculously cold? Or I just envision the park being like covered in this layer of white and just looking even extra beautiful for the holidays.
Yes and yes. It is ridiculously cold. And I've been there. Yeah. So I'm trying to remember how long ago it was, but I was there over New Year, and we got up on New Year's Day, and the lake between the Art of Marble Hotel and Newport Bay Club was completely frozen. It was that cold. And the weird thing about Disneyland Paris is its placement in terms of it's surrounded by agricultural land. It's extremely flat environment. So there is no cushioning or protection from the weather, which is why you get really hot days. But when it's cold, it's super cold. There is nothing to protect you at all. So, between sort of end of December, beginning of February, it can be unbearably cold where you have to layer and layer and layer. But it is incredibly beautiful. Their Christmas decoration. It does snow on Main Street every 20 minutes with some clever snow. But when it snows in the park, it's just beautiful. And I think their Christmas music loop, background loop, is the best out of any of the parks that I've been to. It's my favourite time there.
Yeah.
So that's another trip you need to book. Sorry, not helping you here.
No, but in December, I'm doing one of the we're doing like a group Nat Geo cruise to Budapest and I don't even know where. So I'm on that side of the planet. Maybe I can end for a couple of days just to see Disneyland.
Yeah.
Let me write that down too. Hang on a
second.
Budapest becoming a very expensive.
Budapest will be cold and snowy.
Show I've ever done. Because
we're good at that. We're good at helping people spend money.
We make a habit of it. Yeah.
Is there any final thoughts that you thought you would share if you were trying to explain why someone should visit Disneyland Paris who hasn't been there before? What would your elevator pitch be?
So I think that if you've been to other parks, whether domestically here in the States or even seen the other parks, there is something wonderfully familiar about Disneyland Paris. But I think that I think all the parks are special, but there is a unique special element to this park. And I know I sort of keep coming back to the castle, but everything that sort of ripples out from it. I think it really is visually the most beautiful park in terms of its layout, in terms of its castle, in terms of the lands themselves. If I was trying to convince somebody, I think when you talk about going to some of the other parks, the first thing you talk about is, well, it has this attraction and that attraction. You have to go and see the land. But I keep sort of saying, because I really do believe that the park itself is the attraction. The thing that I enjoyed doing most in that park was spending my time wandering through that park, usually with some sort of a baguette or something. Yeah, it is a wonderfully designed and beautiful. I have this sort of very romantic attachment to Disneyland Paris.
We love that. I think we all feel the same. There's something
Yeah.
familiar, but also very European, very French about it, and it has the elegance. I think that some of the other parks maybe don't have, which fits with where it is.
Just very quickly to potentially dispel, especially if you're somebody who's listening, like from the States, everyone was very nice. Like all the cast members, only like
Is that the thought that people are?
I think that there was this. I think it's started to dissipate over time, but very early on, the French didn't like Americans and they weren't very nice. We saw none of that. Everyone was wonderful. We tried our best to speak French as we could, and people were very like understanding and receptive. There was no issues in terms of language barriers. Everybody was very, very helpful and very, very kind, and we felt very welcome there. So
that's good. That's good. I think that there's a slightly different approach in terms of communication, whereas my experience in particularly in Walt Disney World is cast members will approach you and have a conversation with you if they see you. Shall I take that photo for you? The European style of communication is they will wait for you to ask them, and then they're very happy to help, but they won't necessarily engage first. So
it's that less openness to start with.
But it's not because they're unfriendly. It's just that's culturally one of those sensitivities that it's. I'm sure when you go to Tokyo and see, Shanghai and Hong Kong, it feels different as well. So they are very friendly, and I think that you're right that there's been a big shift over the last few years in terms of trying to dispel some of those myths. So that's really good to hear.
I know we're talking about Disneyland Paris, but have you been to Tokyo yet?
Not yet. No.
It's on the list.
Let's go. Let's just plan a trip.
Yeah, you need to go.
You need to go you need to do it for the show.
Research trip.
Research trip. Yeah. Take one for the team. Yeah. Aulani's first on my list to take one for the team. I'm heading to Aulani first.
No, we're doing a cruise next year, so that's another research trip.
Yeah,
wow.
That was We're full of great ideas like that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Lou, thank you so much for your time. We have had the best chat about Disneyland Paris. I can talk about Disneyland Paris. In case you hadn't guessed, I can talk about it for hours and hours and hours and hours.
I know. I just want to go and book a trip.
Yeah, I'm thinking October, or should we maybe wait until December?
Do Christmas.
Do Christmas.
And
then I'll have to wait and see what I can do for work in terms of work. I know I've got a week off in October. That's the difference.
First week of January, top tip. It's cheaper and it's still Christmassy.
And we're only 3-hour drive.
Only 3 hours drive. Yeah.
Just go overnight and then come back. Be fine. But thank you, Lou. I'm over the moon that you've been twice and you're heading back again, and that you've managed to complete your full set of parks. I hope you get a certificate or something. I want to see that you have like stamps on the wall, or so, like a badge, you've got all your park. I feel like there should be a badge.
Sorry, Claire, I just think of like wilderness explorers just having like a park.
Badge, right? Yeah.
No,
that should be thing.
All I have are receipts from all the different parks.
Oh, well, yeah. We can't help you with those.
No.
But it's been so lovely to hear your thoughts, and we appreciate your time. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me back. You are all so very kind and so very nice, and it's always such a pleasure being here. And when you come back to Walt Disney World, please let me know. I'd love to see you for the first time or see you again and share a meal together.
Yeah.
That's a great plan. And your French was formidable. So well done.
That's it.
I'm not even sure what that means.
It's still better than mine.
You know what? It has been so much fun today, and thank you for tuning into the Great British Mickey Waffle. We hope you've enjoyed this episode and it's brought a bit of Disney into your day. If you want to stay up to date with all the things we're doing, follow us on social media at GB Mickey Waffle on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Threads. We're everywhere. And you can also find us at our website, gbmickeywaffle.com. If you want to go old school, which is ridiculous saying this is old school, you can always email us with any comments at waffleon@gbmickeywaffle.com. We love hearing from you, and we'd love your feedback on the show. So thank you, Lou. Thank you, John, Ben, Becca. I've had a great time recording this. And I guess there's only one thing left to say.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Well,
Chauncey Noel.